Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this. It's a gorgeous day in Alberta and a gorgeous day in Edmonton. I don't know how it is where you are, but we're celebrating a nice, gorgeous Thursday with a cold takes because it's really warm right now. So, we need some cold in our life. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. Today was like muggy and not even that sunny, so it's not my favorite kind of heat, but
Yeah.
I'll still take it over our winters any day.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So definitely happy that you're here, definitely happy that you're joining us today. This is really appreciate the inner circle being here, being part of this conversation as well. And obviously we cannot do this without the NGM inner circle. This is the you people always support Next Gen Men, and we want to acknowledge that. So we want to shout out 5 of the NGN members. I'm still not used to saying members. It's always just like members. Anyways, our Next Gen Men family. So first, we want to acknowledge Amit Josen. Secondly, we want to acknowledge Tracy Bell. Thirdly, we want to acknowledge Mason Slavner. Fourthly, we want to acknowledge Tomonari Hasagawa. And 5, we want to acknowledge Mark Nickel. Hey, we know Mark.
We sure do.
Yeah. Mark's a wonderful guy. You know what? I was watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine just recently. We've just gone through Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Have you watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
You know Mark reminds me of?
Oh my God,
Charles.
don't. Yeah, I was gonna say Charles. Yeah, it's true. It's like the look, but also like the way that he speaks. I love it so much. I love it so much.
Yeah. Charles is a wonderful man in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and he's a wonderful father. Really cares about his son. Also, Mark, you remind me of Charles. It's really interesting and really funny. And Mark, we love you. We also love
We do.
everyone else in the 5 Next Gen members. So again, we cannot do this without you. So thank you, and thank you. Um, we're also going to bring up a special guest once she shows up right here. So yeah, so we're going to bring in a special guest today. So you might know her if you have listened to the Masculinity podcast. She originally from New York, now living in California. This is Samantha Nzessi. So I'm just going to invite her to the screen. Hopefully she shows up. We'll see. This is new technology working for us. So,
Yeah.
um,
And no one got to see our battle that we just had with
oh my
Herman's
god,
mic
yeah.
and sound. I was like, all I hear is static. Herman, he was like, oh
Just
my
like
God, freaking out.
I was freaking out silently.
All I could see is him just like, like, why won't it work? But we got
There
it.
she is. Hey
Hello.
Sam,
Hey guys, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. Happy to be here. I
Yeah,
feel
I
like I should be part of the glasses crew. I should have brought my blue light just to pretend like I
mm.
was part of the crew here, headphones and glasses. But anyway, yeah,
Hey, whatever. Next time we'll coordinate our clothing.
yeah.
Um, how are you doing, Samantha? How's the weather over there in California?
It's good. So I just also want to say I'm not from New York. I lived in New York, but I'm
Oh, I'm
actually from
sorry.
California. That's okay. That's okay. I
Okay,
just want to, make sure that I rep
yeah,
California properly.
for sure.
So yeah, yeah.
So you're originally from California, you went to New York, and then you came back home. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
awesome. Where in California are
Yeah.
you from?
I am from like the suburbs of the Bay Area. So, I mean, if anybody out there knows where Tracy, California is, that's where I went to high school. I mean, I'm from France originally, then I grew up in California. It's like, you know, little suburb,
Wow.
little suburb, little conservative suburb of California.
Hey, we know all about that. Veronica and I know about conservative pockets of our place, so we definitely
Hmm.
know all about that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately.
Yes. Samantha, we can you tell us what you do not only through Next Gen Men but just outside of your daily life? What do you do?
Sure. I am a transcriptionist slash translator by day. And then, as far as Next Gen Men goes, I think I kind of am helping with some of the, let's say, communications aspects in terms of like guest relations and things like that. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Giving us some communications in regards to our podcast network, especially specifically with Modern Manhood, as well being a wonderful conduit of opinions and research and people that we want to get through Modern Manhood, and also just being able to just give us some amazing opinions through our conversations. It's always a pleasure to see you every week
Same.
to talk about the podcast itself. Can you talk
Same.
to us about masculinity with you and Ramoy? Like how you started it, how that became a thing, and yeah, just tell us a little bit more about that.
I was gonna ask that, Herman.
Oh, sorry,
Oh, good.
Veronica, I'm stepping on your toes.
No, it's good. It's good. Go, Samantha. Go. I'm excited to learn.
Yeah, so essentially the kind of what happened was that the Brock Turner case happened, and I was so confused and just like besieged with anger, but mostly confusion because I couldn't understand why somebody who was so obviously wrong and was so obviously like a committer of violence was getting so much compassion, and there wasn't much like compassion actually going to the victim of the crime. And so that kind of prompted me to want to understand why systemically there was so much behind this young man who obviously was a perpetrator of violence, and why in general it was okay in society for courts to side with men having access to people's bodies without their consent. And so what happened is I started having conversations with men in my life to kind of understand like what's really going on with, like what it's like to be a dude, and like where have you learned these things, and so one of the people that I interviewed actually, who's my good friend Ramoy, who's my co-host for Masculinity, and just like an extremely just thoughtful thinker about all of these different things, kind of, it just kind of seemed like a very natural thing for us to partner up on this. So yeah, turned out he had some of the same questions that I did, so it worked out.
Absolutely. Veronica, do you have any other questions?
No, I would. Actually, yes. I lied. How did you and Ramoy meet? Like, how did you become friends? Like, prior to deciding, like, okay, we're going to do this podcast.
We used to work at Apple together.
Nice.
Yeah, in the city, in Brooklyn. I mean, not in Brooklyn, sorry, in New York, but we both live in Brooklyn at the time. Yeah.
That's cool.
That's nice. You guys make a really good.
Ramoy.
Yeah, shout out to you, Ramoy.
Yeah.
I know you're listening out there. I know you guys make a really good team doing Masculinity, and I was a really big fan of that show. It really informed what I did at Modern Manhood a lot, and so definitely shout out to you, and hopefully, crossing our fingers, we're not hoping anything that show comes back in full effect as well too.
Yes, coming back.
Yes.
Stay tuned.
Yes. So today, actually, we wanted to talk. We were prepping before the show. We wanted to talk a lot about some dad culture. I know you have some opinions about dad culture and dadcore and stuff like that. But Veronica, actually, you wanted to talk specifically about something that just happened in Texas.
Yeah, and I was wondering if Samantha knew a little more about it than maybe I did, because I only just heard about it, and I was like, what? But apparently Texas passed their heartbeat bill. I don't know if you heard about this.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I heard only a little bit of it. It's been something that I've been kind of trying to avoid reading about because I can't believe that that's happening. Okay. So it passed today. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, I have like just a little bit, and I guess we don't have to get into it if you'd rather not talk about it too. That's okay.
Oh, no. Let's talk about it, definitely. There's a perfect place to talk about it.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, so the news that I saw was from the Texas Tribune. I don't know if that's reputable news. I don't know. It's just the one I saw. But it was saying, I don't know, Governor Greg Abbott signed into law Wednesday a measure that would prohibit in Texas abortions as early as 6 weeks before some women even know they're pregnant, and open the door for almost any private citizen to sue abortion providers and others. The signing of the bill opens up a new frontier in the battle over abortion restrictions, as first of its kind legal provisions intended to make the law harder to block are poised to be tested in the courts. And I was like, holy fuck. But that wasn't actually the first place I heard about it. The first place I heard about it was a young woman who I think was valedictorian or class president or something. She did a speech to her graduating class recently, where she was like, I was going to talk about something completely different, but I'm going to talk about this because holy shit, like all of our futures are at stake kind of thing. And I was like, what? Okay, first of all, glad her mic didn't get cut because I thought that would be sure to happen. But secondly, like, very brave and like necessary to be raising voices against this kind of thing. But holy fuck. Yeah. So yeah, thoughts, Samantha? Oh my god.
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind is we had an activist who's she doesn't call herself a pro-choice activist. She calls herself, anyway, her name is Heidi Seek, and one of the things that she talked about was how there's a huge push on the conservative side to make it seem as though as if like abortion and reproductive rights are like a split issue for the American people, and it's not. Like the majority, like 70% actually of the country is super down to have reproductive rights. And so it's important to point out in these cases that there's a smaller subset of the population that wants kind of stuff like this to pass, right? And so we're just seeing kind of like this huge conservative effort to continue to regress, to continue to regress for honestly what I see as population control, as the control of women's bodies. And it's all about just like continuing harmful traditions. It has nothing to do with I don't want to say nothing to do necessarily, but the majority of the people don't actually want it. And so it's an imposition. It's an imposition on women. It's an imposition on honestly everybody, not just women. It's just an imposition. And it goes without saying, I think that it's I find it to be morally wrong and repulsive, but also it's just none of your business what happens. If somebody doesn't know that she's pregnant or that they're pregnant, like including, folks with vaginas that don't necessarily identify as feminine, like all of these things, it's not productive. It's not logical even. It's just a push to continue this fake ideology of like we're evenly split on this issue when really that's not the case at all. So yeah.
That's a really good point. Like I think it can be hard for folks to know, like, I guess where public opinion actually sits on certain issues, right? And and it can seem like it has more support than it does, and yet it's like, whoa, like, okay, does democracy work? Like when you're like, okay, if most people don't want this and it's still happening, it's sort of like, I don't know, to me it's sort of like erodes faith in the way that decisions are made, because you're like, holy shit, like how can that happen when most people don't even want it? Like, what?
Messaging. Wild. Messaging, coercion, like public coercion of like basically the messaging landscape. It's wild. It's completely wild. Yeah.
And and I don't know if this is like, sorry, Herman, I will let you speak again.
No. Keep going.
Just a question that comes up. I'm curious if it's like, my friend and I were just talking about this today, like institutions that refuse to evolve, sometimes the pushback that they give on the way out is like really hard. Do you feel like this is like the death rattle of conservatives? Like it's part of them like trying to cling to something that doesn't really exist? Or is that too hopeful? Like they're on the way out?
That's a very good question. I hope it is, but I think that the thing that we're dealing with in particular in this country, which I think a lot of people aren't really grasping, is that all of the things that the administration that just left and all of the senators and everybody that they put in place, everything that they passed kind of under all the stuff that they slipped into, like all of the provisions and stuff, we're not going to see for like another 5 to 15 years. Like we're not going to see the impacts of that for a while. Like it's going to take a while for that to set in, and then we're going to have to take another 10, 15 years to undo it. So I think it's hard to tell at the moment if they're grasping at straws or if it's a way of, so they put this stuff in front of us to kind of like sensationalize and like, make us kind of angry at the surface, and then underneath they're institutionalizing all this wild shit that we're not going to know about till later. It's a little bit difficult to know where that falls. Yeah. So hoping for the former. Hopefully it's not the latter. I'm worried that it's the weather though, because we live in America. But hey, I think things are. I was gonna say things are better than they seem. I don't. They're not.
Yeah, I
They're
agree
not.
with that.
I don't know.
I agree with that. I
Like.
think that like sometimes, and it's interesting because I was having this conversation with somebody else about like how people, it seems like it's worse, that it's just all these things that come up over and over again, and there's always this push against like institutional things that have been just like there and just like moving forward. But there, in the last few years, we have like at least progressives, or people who are consider themselves progressives, have gotten some big wins lately. And so it's interesting to see that, but at the same time, it doesn't mean we can't stop fighting for these kind of things and just making sure that these things have the light shown. And especially with abortion is such a, it is a fraught issue. It is a controversial issue, but at the same time, it's like controversy in a way that feels very old school, like traditional, very like, it's very faith driven, it's very traditional family oriented. It's this idea of like this traditional coupling, like very heteronormative too. It's just this idea that, oh, we have to have this nuclear family, one child, and also this idea that, oh, we cannot kill children, blah 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 blah. But I think it's just a push against these traditional norms. And I'm curious for both of you, and this is a question for either of you. Where do you think men's voices are in this debate specifically? Not in this issue, not in this debate. I'm very pro-choice. I'm just saying, like, if you're somebody who's pro-choice, if you're a guy that's pro-choice, where are you in this? Where could be a person that could really help in this kind of idea? Veronica, you are muted.
Thank
There
you,
you
thank
go.
you. Sorry. I was just sarcastically replying that maybe they could start with not signing bills like this into law.
Oh yeah, that is,
start with the basics.
Absolutely, yeah. Just say somebody who's not a lawmaker, somebody who's not in power, somebody who's just like.
Please don't vote for people who will do that
either. Yeah. I mean, where I'm at is like, talk to dudes about like what they think about that should happen with this. I mean, I think a lot of times what happens is, you either have people who are like, oh, this isn't my issue, or they're like, oh, like this should absolutely not happen. And it's like there are all these guys kind of in between who are like, well, I think this is wrong, but like I don't really know what to do. And honestly, it's like, I don't really know that like the answer is to have everybody organizing necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
I think that being vocal about how they feel is the first thing. Just say it often, that this is not something that you're into, like the fact that or reproductive rights and reproductive justice are things is an issue that you care about. Say it a lot, and say it to other dudes, because I think like, women, I think you're we have the body, so we know where we stand on it. You're either into it or you're not, but I think that with men, there's like I feel like it kind of is a parallel to like a lot of different issues having to do with like misogyny and sexism, right? Where it's like dudes who are like, no, this is wrong, or kind of like, this is wrong, but also like, is it really my place to say something about that? Yeah. It is. Go talk to your homies about it. Talk to your cousins about it. I mean, that's really, just be vocal about how it's not okay.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
Totally. And I'm basing this on an article from The Atlantic, and I think it was, when did this come out? I was just reading it just recently. It just came out June 10th, so last year, 2 years ago. It's called Men Aren't Quite Sure How to Be Abortion Rights Activist. And this is kind of this idea that men specifically who are pro-choice are kind of in that kind of like that gray area, being like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. It's not really because they understand that this is a women's choice and stuff like that. At the same time, they're also in this kind of like interesting, precarious place where they're just like, I want to speak up, but I also don't want to take over the room because this is not my voice to do this. However, on the quote unquote other side, the pro-life side or whatever that's called, there's a lot of guys that are happily able to take over the space and the room and the voices of so-called pro-lifers. Like it's and so there's kind of like this like weird frailty with guys that are pro-choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone has any opinions on that.
I agree. I think that's kind of, because I think one of the things that came up as well when we were talking is like, okay, another thing is like, it's great if you go and work within an organization that's already doing that work. A lot of those organizations are led by women, which is awesome. And like, I think that taking space usually happens in places where there are women or feminine people. So it's like, you don't need, I mean, you could, but you don't really need to be having that conversation in those spaces because we're already having that conversation, right? It's like people who aren't going to say anything, but then covertly will go and vote for, somebody who is saying that, they have conservative views and they believe in life and da 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 da. You know what I mean? Like, that is like, you want to take space in spaces with men. And I think that is something that can be very difficult, which of course kind of, refers back to a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, right? And kind of like this network is, how men talk about issues, how they talk about things that supposedly they're not supposed to care about, or they're not supposed to feel vulnerable enough to kind of like let themselves get drawn into, like that's all of that, right? Like being able to have those conversations that say, hey, like, we're not going to do this like casual misogyny. We're not going to do this casual misogyny that then turns into legislated misogyny, right? So like take space with dudes. You don't have to take space with us about that at all. Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Veronica, is there anything that you want to say about that?
I feel like Samantha said it perfectly. And that's like 100% the goal of things like equity leaders, right? Like at Next Gen Men, it's like we do need men to speak up, but in the male dominated workplaces that they already exist in, because that is where they have such an influence over their peers, right? And like we need allies not just when we're in the room, but when we're not, like please don't change your behavior when we leave. So that's a big deal for sure.
And it's interesting because like abortion laws definitely affect women the most, and that is an absolute non-starter there. That's what happens. However, they do affect men, especially in these hetero couples or like hetero relationships, because they are like, if you are somebody who really loves a person, who really takes care, and all of a sudden you have a moment where there is an accidental pregnancy that you don't want to have that, you know what I mean? And that is a conversation that you should have with your partner, and if there is a law that says, you know what, we just can't and that we just have to suck it up, that affects that person as well too, right? And I think that's that shouldn't go without saying as well too, like especially in these kind of relationships. They're not only because we should stand up because it is a rights issue for people that you care about, but it is also affecting relationships that you might have, not only with the people that you are related with or have sex with, but your friends and your family and so on and so forth as well too. So like,
and your parents and your brothers, and like, oh,
yeah. So I think that there is definitely space for guys to talk about this, and also making sure that knowing where, like, who affects us the most, gets affected the most, right? Are you worried about I've heard many conversations about the Supreme Court stuff being like, that stuff being like Roe versus Wade being overturned and whatnot? Are you worried about that, Samantha, over there?
I am worried about it. I mean, I think for a while it was like the past administration, when you have somebody like Mike Pence, and then you had that chick, Amy Coney Barrett, like be rushed to the front of the line to become Supreme Court justice. And it's like, these are people that are literally like, in some ways, living the Handmaid's Tale, and so it's like to have those people then become legislators, and then you've got, like supremacist adjacent groups that are also kind of like in the mix, it just becomes a little bit scary, because you're seeing how there's such a much smaller subset of the population that's then able to have representation that governs the rest of us. And it feels scary because no one cares about facts. Well, not no one cares about facts. A
Some
lot of folks
people.
don't care about facts.
Yeah,
Enough
I agree
people
with
don't
that.
care
I
about
agree with
facts
that.
that, like, then it turns into a thing where it's like you can't have like a proper conversation about what those implications are. And I think that what scares me is that we're I mean, everything is flashing real red right now, you know, like everything is flashing real red. But you know, you've got you know, insurrections going down, you've got, you know, like senators walking in, like threatening other senators, like having like machine guns and stuff and talking shit or whatever, and they're continuing to go to Congress every day, you know, wearing like censored masks at the mic, and you're just like,
Right.
all right, you know. And there's no other place that that would be okay, but somehow the United States Senate is where that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, and so yeah, that does scare me,
Yeah.
because I'm like, for the amount of resources that are behind that effort are astronomical, which is why we think they're bigger than they are. And then now
Mm-hmm.
they're growing, you know, they've, I mean, not now, but they've been growing a following. So yeah, it's not, it's very, yeah, it makes, I don't want to say uneasy, because the thought of like being a handmaiden makes me a little bit more than uneasy, but I don't really have quite the term. It's more something like panic, you know.
Yeah.
It's panic. Yeah.
Well, please know that you can come to Canada and live with us whenever you want, because we're not going to let you become a handmaiden. In your
Ramoy's
Well,
been
how
trying
weird,
that for
okay,
ages.
handmaiden,
Like,
but like
you
say my
know,
nieces, for example.
why can't we can get Ramoy here too. We can
yeah,
adopt all of
I got a
our
new place.
American
I
friends.
got
Perfect.
I got room
We
I
got
got room for all
space.
of you. I got room for
We
all of
got
you.
space.
I have a loophole. I definitely have a nationality loophole on that
Oh,
one.
that's right.
So yeah, but I want to, you know, it's not just me, right? It's not just me.
Mm-hmm.
Like
It's
I'll
true.
probably be all
Absolutely.
right, but like it's not just me. So yeah,
It's true.
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So one heavy topic to another heavy topic, and then we're going to get to a lighter topic. Uh, so the you know, like at the start of like when we were thinking about cold takes, we're like, oh no, well, let's talk about these two kind of like fluffy issues, and then all of a sudden like things happen. You're like, of course, you gotta like deal with the real stuff first, and then we can get to some of the easier stuff. Okay, so Veronica, can you let us know what happened in Canada just recently?
Yes. So, as I'm sure most people have seen, but because it did make international news, I believe, as well, the remains of 215 Indigenous children were found at a former residential school site in Kamloops, British Columbia, and like some as young as 3 years old. And um, it's definitely like not surprising to many people, because we know this is a part of our history and our ongoing, the colonial project that is Canada. But obviously, like, it shook a lot of people, and you know, I think it, of course, like, a lot of emotions for people, especially Indigenous people, right? Who are like, yeah, we've been telling you this, and nobody fucking believed us. Like, they know, right? And so yeah, it's just been uh, a really heavy piece of news for sure. And it sort of brings up just like, the inaction as well of the Canadian government over the years. Like, you know, there has been like an official apology on behalf of, the Canadian government, and then some of the churches involved, but not the Catholic Church. Because I don't know, they can't apologize, I guess. But because these residential schools were government and church run, right? So it was a project by
I
both.
didn't know.
Yeah, they were. It was like Catholic, I believe, Presbyterian, Anglican, and United churches were all involved.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is a piece of history that hasn't always been talked about, been left out of a lot of previous, curriculums for school. It is now being taught more in schools, but for a lot of people, it's like, okay, this is like way too little, too late, and our genocide against Indigenous people is definitely ongoing. There's many ways in which we can see that, from like our crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, to the extraordinary amounts of Indigenous children taken into child welfare care across Canada, and over incarceration. There's tons of problems that are really rooted in this colonial approach. And yeah, so I guess I'm glad to see that people are talking about it again, because they should be, which we should have never stopped talking about it. And I'm hoping that it will spurn some action. We years ago completed the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was a big truth-telling project to get those stories of survivors of residential schools and of the 60s scoop and of other aspects of genocide to speak about it, and then for people to be able to know about it, and then for us to be able to actually work on the reconciliation piece as a country. But they had close to, like, I think it was like 200 recommendations of, like, not even recommendations, calls to justice, right? That we were like, we need to do this. Like, survivors have spoken. They have told you exactly what you need to do. Here's a roadmap of what we need to do as a country. And I think we've acted on maybe 10 of the 200 things that have been literally laid out for us as a plan to get where we need to go. And so there have been a lot of people being like, listen, can we move a little bit faster? Because we know it's possible. We know we have the resources to do it. It's just we're lacking, apparently, political will to make that happen. And so that has been a big piece of news across the country lately.
That's devastating.
Yeah, absolutely devastating. And I think that's like it was a big, like, eye-opening moment for a lot of people. And I think that people who might have thought, like, okay, you know what, it happened, it sucked, but it was all in the past. And that's, I think, a lot of, like, the mentality of a lot of Canadians is just like that. They might be just aware of it, but they're just like, you know what, that's just whatever back there. This really just, like, brought up to, like, the realities and the horrifying truth of what happened there. It's interesting because lately there's been a lot of, and this started actually with last summer as well, with the Black Lives Matter movement, that there's been this kind of calls of, looking back at our history and being like, who have been really our people that we have exalted, who have done some terrible shit, including our, like, first prime minister, and including other people involved as well too. Like, there's footage of, like, John A. Macdonald's our first prime minister. His statue was toppled, and I think in, like, Newfoundland, I think it was. Yeah. So
I think it might have been Montreal.
Montreal? Was it Montreal? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
So it's interesting because that's happened in the US too, right? Like, there's been all these kind of like looking back into historical, like, people who we really were, like, fond of before. We're like, you know what, this person was actually, like, either, like, a slave owner, they were like, or they were like, what we find here is just, like, there are people who names of communities and schools are like, oh, this person was actually, it's kind of a racist. Actually, not even just a racist, like an actual, like, did want to kill people, like, racist, like
murdering racist.
Yeah, like a really bad person. And so this conversation's turned into, like, well, we should, like, go back into history and, like, revert, and it's become this kind of culture war, and I hate this kind of culture war, and I'm just turning this back into, like, this idea of masculinity, and how, like, we need to, like these, it's usually these guys who are just like, we need to preserve history. We can't learn from history. And, like, the same thing happened with the South, with the Southern, like, Civil War, generals and what like that and stuff. That what happened with Trump too. So this is kind of the same idea. So I wanted to kind of tie this into this kind of idea of masculinity and how we want to, like, there's some people who are afraid to look back, and, like, acknowledge and deal with that past, and there's some people who don't, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's any thoughts around that or not.
I mean,
mean, I think for me, just like it always really kind of goes back to these ideal of value, you know? Like I think when we talk about equity and equality, I think there's a lot of conversation around like people being like viewed the same way and like I'm colorblind and da 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 da. And that's not what it's about. It's about being able to acknowledge people's differences and acknowledging that despite those differences, they are of equal value. And when you really take a look at the context that we're living in, it's very clear who has the most value and who will be held accountable if they like basically and how they won't be held accountable if they harm someone who is viewed to have less value than they have, you know? So I think in the case of these kids, it's like, you know, we're living in a white supremacy. I'm pretty sure y'all are living in a white supremacy as well up there, as much as y'all are much nicer
Absolutely.
than we are. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's we
it's
100% do.
still,
Yeah.
yeah. And so it's like when you take a look at that and you look at that context and you're real about what that is, it's like you have to ask yourself a question. In order for people to be brought to justice, you have to acknowledge that they're wrong. You have to acknowledge that regardless of what you think this person did for the founding or XYZ or whatever of this country, they were killing, raping, and pillaging people's shit. So it's like you can't, people and their shit. And so it's like, as long as we're not willing to flip that context or at least look at it for what it is and start to kind of like make some adjustments around that, it's all just kind of like, it's like nice talk, you know? It's like when Joe Biden gets on TV and he's like, yeah, you know, we gotta like undo white supremacy and oh my goodness, reparations and oh my goodness, like this is so wrong. And then he has like meetings behind closed doors and he's like, I mean, yeah, we're not gonna do anything about that, but you know, the speech is nice and it feels important because he's acknowledging it, right? But then behind closed doors, it's like none of that is actually like part of the constitution of who he is as a leader and like the kind of progressive changes that he's trying to make. He just wants to talk a good talk because that's what, you know, we want to hear, you know? So there's that kind of like context. Like I think people, when we talk about like white supremacy and we talk about like racism and we talk about misogyny and all of that, it's all kind of this idea. It's like this kind of like these concepts and all of that. And what that looks like in real time is finding like shit like this, where you're like, people are literally being killed. They're being murdered with no consequence. Like that is what that is. That is what that looks like in real time. And now we have kind of like this whole process through which we have to hold people accountable. We have to find out what's going on and blah, blah, blah. I mean, if the coin had landed on the other side, first of all, there's not a single person of color who would be found having a tomb of white kids. That would never happen in either one of our countries. That's not even possible.
Absolutely.
That's like nobody would ever think to do anything like that because they know that they wouldn't. I mean, they couldn't step out their front door without being. They probably would be murdered. I mean, there wouldn't be a due process for that. They probably would be murdered. They would be like the dude from, the Boston guy who, the marathon guy or whatever, who had his like throat cut out or some shit. I mean, you know, like literally took his complete voice away. Like it just wouldn't happen. So I mean, unless that is willing to actually happen, which I don't think it is. I think it's the efforts of a lot of folks who are really trying to topple and trying to like get in and really kind of take over power and like change narrative. That's where it's going to be at. Because I mean, if I were a white supremacist, I'm gonna be honest with you, I wouldn't want to give that shit up either.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, why would you?
Totally.
You know?
Totally.
Like, everything is stacked in your favor. Why would you want to give it up if you really felt like you were the supreme being, you know? So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it also reminds me of what happens with Justin Trudeau. It's the same idea. He's like, he goes up there, he says sorry. And you're like, there are material things that you can do to make this happen, to make this work. Like there are actual, like, I don't know if you know this, but there are actually indigenous communities that still don't have drinking water and like proper drinking water. Yeah. And in the middle of fighting in the middle of finding this unmarked tomb of kids, they were in the middle of a court battle, like fighting these survivors of resident school. Like the federal government was in the middle of a court battle between that. And I'm just like, like sorry is not enough anymore. Like as much as Canadians love to say sorry, I'm just like this is not enough. Like it's like it is one thing to kind of do something, and I also like I really care about the material. Like what is the material action that we're going to do to make sure this never happens again. And we're like Veronica's right, like we're still doing it, right? Like we're still like we do it in different ways. Like there's a massive incarceration problem that is like our jails are filled with indigenous and black folk, and it's just like, and I'm like there's a reason for that, and it's not because they commit more crimes. It's definitely white supremacy. And there's we're having a what's this called, like an opioids problem, and again that is a white supremacist issue, and it is not because like people just got out of hand, and like this is also a part of that as well, and we just can't deal with it, and we just cannot deal with it because we're stuck in this kind of like culture war, this idea of like, oh, we can't cancel like Johnny McDonald. We can't cancel those like Civil War heroes. Like it fucking doesn't matter.
Sorry,
like,
you can't cancel people who are dead. Like they're dead. Like just
like,
Johnny McDonald does not give a fuck. I guarantee you. He's gone. Like I struggle with this too. Like it is like so far past the time of like words, like and honestly it's about keeping promises. Like where's your integrity, man? Like Justin Trudeau promised in his 2015 election that he would get clean drinking water to all Indigenous nations that didn't have it. And he's been re-elected and he still hasn't done it. So we're just like, what is the fucking hold up? Like, you said you would do this. Deliver, like that's what you're supposed to do. So
and these are progressive people, right? And that's the thing that bugs me, right? It's like Joe Biden and Justin Trudeau, who are liberal, who are, like they're supposed to be our leftist people, but I mean,
they're center at best. Come on.
Yeah, I know. But at the same time, but at the same time, it's like, who do you? But like the conservatives are going to do, like the Republicans are going to do that? No, hell no. Like, and so it's like it's stuck in this weird bind, right?
The thing that's tough is that, as much as I hate the Republican discourse and conservative discourse and completely disagree with everything. Actually, no. I mean, they lie too, but it's like, no, they lie too. Never mind. But like, they lie too. But they'll like lie. They'll like try to. They'll tell you, oh, I'm not gonna do it. They'll give you a fake ass justification for why they're not gonna do it, but they'll tell you they're not doing it.
Right.
They'll be like, I'm not doing it, and it's because of these things that are based on something that's something other than fact.
They'll blame someone else.
Alternate fact, whatever. Blame someone, whatever.
Totally.
But we're not doing it. The liberal or Democrat will be like, no, we're going to do this, but it's just all tied up. It's just like the conservatives, like, it's just wild. Like, the Senate, like, I mean, it's just so hard to like pass things because they're so unreasonable. And we got to meet them in the middle. We got to like,
Totally.
Like, they'll just be like, it's not our fault that this isn't happening. We have all the power right now. It's not our fault though. It's not our fault. It's their fault. So it's just when you look at it that way, it's like, I had a moment where, and I was kind of more of like an idealist. I'm a little less like that these days. But I've been an idealist my whole life up until probably like 2 years ago. And just like politics and legislation are a business. It's an industry, and it's like got a bunch of other industry behind it. So it's like, you've got people like Stacey Abrams and like Ayanna Presley's and like, those folks and like AOC's and stuff, which AOC's apparently has her own issues, but I still rock with her. I think that, she's a politician, she's trying to do her thing, whatever, But then you have people like Kamala Harris, who's like gonna leave everyone who is like in jail for pot in prison. And it's like, where is the logic? There's no logic. It's just money. She just wants to make her friends money off those bodies. So it's like,
Yeah.
Well, and that would drive us into another conversation about like why representation isn't always enough, right? Like the thing that like, I don't know, I told this to the MLA that I was working with during my practicum. It was just like, I don't really want more women in politics if they're not going to be fucking progressive, like, and actually be progressive, right? Like, I don't care if the Conservative Party of Alberta gets more women in their caucus. It doesn't matter. They're not going to help me, right? They're not going to help women. They're not going to help marginalized people at all because they don't give a fuck. So, like, it's not really helpful. Right? When representation doesn't actually translate into like the actions that we need.
That's right.
I don't know. That like drives me nuts too. It makes me sad.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah, the weird like tokenism without any actual change. Like it's the same. Like going back to the Trudeau thing, it's just like oh yeah, you have a 50-50 split on cabinet with like women and men. But you're like, it doesn't matter if you're not going to do anything about it. Like it doesn't really matter. Like it's just this is just a show, and it pisses me off. I'm happy that I'm not happy. I'm just like I'm happy that you're all connected to the same kind of anger that I have with politics. It's the same idea to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think like I have like 15 different things that I want to say at once. But the first thing that I want to talk about in terms of like women kind of being in those positions, it's like none of that matters if you're going to be a patriarchal, like, if you're going to champion that, which, I mean, there's no way that women haven't been subscribing to it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have gotten here if there weren't a lot of women who were down for the patriarchal bullshit. You know what I'm saying? So, like if I have 50 Amy Cobey Barretts or whatever kicking it in Congress, that's not going to do shit for me. That's not going to do shit for me. And honestly, it's probably not going to do shit for you either. So it's just, you can't, like, all of that representation, that fluff, it's all part of like a systemic, like, I don't even know how to like put it. It's all systemic, basically. I mean, it's not, you can't, it's
I'm sorry for driving us in that direction, because I feel like we need to have a bigger conversation about that at some point, because it's a fascinating thing. Like I'm very interested in how like diversity, equity, and inclusion has become like this big thing, but then I'm like, if we're only focusing on diversity, like a lot of places are, and then they like really stumble on the equity inclusion parts, then they're like bringing more people to a place where they're going to be harmed. You know what I mean? Like it's not like but either way, that I feel like is a really big conversation, and we need to have it again in the future. And I think Herman's probably thinking we should probably get to our like happy topics or slightly lighter topics.
No, to put this in a bow, to tie this conversation in a bow. I do want to come back to the idea of like Indigenous people, and just like how just in regards to equity, and that's something, and it includes like all marginalized populations. And we started talking about women as a marginalized group, and as well with Indigenous people as a marginalized population as well. I think in regards to equity, like this is one of those things where you're like, sometimes you just got to think outside of our own experience, and just kind of see what's actually out there, right? And I think sometimes to tie this into the masculinity thing, it's just like there is a patriarchal aspect to this, and I think if you really dig deep, you can find it. And I know there are a lot of organizations that are trying to fight this, especially with like our murdered and missing Indigenous women, and all people as well too, that are just fighting to survive. And I think of like somebody like Paul Lacerte, who runs the Moosehide organization.
Campaign.
It's campaign. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Who tries to involve men into helping out with the murder of missing Indigenous women, facet of that, and making sure that we try to like have, he has like a little moose hide badge that you can wear. There's also a lot of different organizations that you can help and support to fight this cause, and just stand by your Indigenous people that are with you, because they're right now it's not only a hard time for yourself, it's just learning this, but it's also a hard time for them, to just make sure you're being in solidarity with them. It's just like how guys can be solidarity with the abortion issue. It's just like talk to these other guys. It's like you said, Samantha, just talk to other people and just make sure you have that as well. Is there any final thoughts before we move on?
I know we're tabling this for a future time. However, it just dawned on me for a second that maybe this is obvious to y'all, but it just like dawned on me. Inclusion is like a supremacist, like a white supremacist concept, because it's like, what are we being included in? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just a matter of bringing people in, but it's not really like a conversation. Like, I feel like diversity, sure, equity, okay, but inclusion is like just bringing people into a white supremacist fold so that they have a bigger voice within that supremacist fold. Like, that's more of the same in a way. That's like that tokenism that we're talking about.
Totally
that's
agree.
It's not really like, you know, sure, we can include somebody in like in a C-suite and in like a higher solution and like in a higher kind of position, but if they're just going to be in a higher position so that they can further those kind of what's it called, like ideals and standpoints, then that, okay, yeah, that's just a supremacist ideal. Like, I don't really know. I think often, I mean, we're talking a lot about Tulsa right now and like the Tulsa massacre.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been thinking a lot about like the separate but equal clause back in the day and how like that actually could have worked out if it were actually separate but equal. And like Black folks would not have asked for anything. They would have just been like, we're just going to do our thing over here and we're going to do our thing, you know, like,
right.
But that whole inclusion piece is kind of what was done instead of, I mean, not the inclusion of today, but that's what was done instead of like being separate but equal, and like that did not.
Instead, it was included but not equal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
You could be in this space, but like,
shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like Google, for example, like the worst company ever. But anyway.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. I think you're right, Samantha. I think that there's no, like, if you don't have, like, I'm involved with a lot of like diversity and inclusion projects and talks lately, and the inclusion part doesn't matter if the person just gonna, like, if we don't hear their voice and actually take part in their voice and actually make, like, that person needs to feel safe and included in that space, and that means that that person should be free to express themselves authentically as best as they can, and if they're not, then there's no point. There's no point in doing the inclusion thing.
It also means that, like, I think what Samantha is saying too is that the spaces might just need to change. Like, they can't be the same thing. Like, if like it's very much the like liberal feminism versus like socialist feminism kind of idea, where like, okay, if we just are like, yes, get women into C-suites so that they can exploit people for shitty wages, like, that's not really the feminist vision that I have for the world, right? And it probably shouldn't be most people's, but unfortunately I think it's still kind of is. It's about like getting more for women, having them be able to participate in patriarchy and capitalism, wage labor exploitation, rather than changing those systems altogether so that we don't have them anymore.
Yeah, like, the whole girl boss stuff that everybody's talking about.
Indeed. Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
Okay.
So we've established we don't like girl boss anything. So
you know what? It's good though. This is really good. I love the idea of like looking back and being like, you know what, that shit was messed up. Instead of being like, you know, we just kind of just like forget about it and just compartmentalize and just like leave it over there. I think it's great to like look back and be like, well, that shit was messed up. So I'm happy with that, and I think that's important to actually do. So, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna move on here. We just take a small little breath here. These were two heavy subjects, and I really wanted to also, because this is kind of it's a male conversation as well too. Like I'm so happy to have two people who are, you know, so involved in the actual male conversation and just being able to be thinking about this in a bigger way. I wanted to talk about dads because it's Father's Day. Father's Day is coming up. Everyone has a father. So hopefully, you know, we want to be able to honor fatherhood as well too, because I know that there is this conversation about fatherhood as well. But I also kind of wanted to bring this a little bit lighter, just because I know lately, and this is kind of an online thing I've noticed. I don't know if it stretches out into the real world, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like being a dad is like a cool thing now. Like I know nobody is a father here. I'm not a father, and nobody else is a father in this conversation. But like, is it like are they coming back in style? Is this is this a thing that you've noticed?
I definitely think that the girl dad is cool. Everybody's like girl dad, girl dad.
Okay,
Yeah, like I feel like types of
what's a
dads are
girl
cool.
dad?
I think it's like the dad of a girl or like a feminine kid,
Oh, okay,
but
okay,
that's
okay,
like
okay.
super like, oh, like I let her paint my nails and like you know,
Yes,
like yeah, and
yes,
it's like cute, but it's like to me it's still like hella patriarchal.
yeah.
Like
Okay,
I
explain
yeah,
more. Tell me more.
because I think that what I think happens in that kind of like discourse is that women only get humanized once like fathers are like, oh my God, I have a daughter. And so therefore all women must now be treated well because my significant other or my baby's mom or whatever gave birth to a child who's a girl that I now love. And so now my outlook on women has like transformed. And
Mm-hmm.
I now realize that I never should have been a misogynist. I should have called my friend out for being a misogynist. Like, none of this shit is okay. And it's like, okay, that's cool. But like, if you're a single guy and you're by yourself and you kick it with your bros all day every day and on Friday nights you go and you like hit on people or whatever, like you should not be a misogynist either. What the fuck?
Right.
Like what are we like I don't get and I think like the pride of like, oh yeah, like this dad is like so being so awesome and it's just like, bro, like I hate the way that parenting is constructed in that way. Number one because I think it's like we think of like girl dads like being nice and like good to their daughters as being something that is like so it's a great thing, but it's so apparently far removed from what men are normally like or what dads are normally like that we have to like name it girl dad.
Interesting.
It's like, and it's like I was thinking about like the tenderness too that like men show. I mean, this was supposed to be a lighthearted topic, but I'm
No,
not
it's
that great
okay.
at that.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Turns
It's all
out,
good.
but like I'm just thinking about like like girl dad and boy dad and like the tenderness and how awesome that is and blah blah blah. And I'm like, yo, like, are you showing tenderness to your son? Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you're a boy dad, does that mean that you're like cuddling your son? Does that mean you're telling your son that you love him? Does that mean that like, or does that mean like, yo, yeah, we're playing basketball, we're doing all this stuff, blah blah, blah. Like, I don't. The fact that we're aligning again, we're just aligning tenderness, loving, care, rearing with like girlhood or womanhood or femininity and stuff, and I'm just like, I'm not with that. I'm not with that at all. So,
Yeah, treat
yeah.
both your children with that love that apparently is okay if you are the father of a girl. But like, please treat all your children that way. Yeah, I totally hear that as well. And it is interesting when Lana Wells did some research here in Canada on like what motivates men to get involved in feminism. One of the major things was like female
Being a
family
father.
members, but also being a father.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like exactly what you said. It's like it's both like wonderful and unfortunate that it takes that to care.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm like, yay on the one hand, and on the other hand, I'm like,
Where were
why?
you? Yeah.
Yeah. Why did it take so long? Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, why did it take so long? But also, like, is it actually teaching us anything, or are we just making something cute out? Like, I just don't know if it's actually transforming like the landscape of equity when we say that. I guess is my thing. It's like, yes, I'm glad that you're now a very thoughtful father. I'm glad that you're thinking about what your daughter wants to do and all of these things. But it's like, in terms of moving the needle for real equity for that daughter and her homies who are also women or feminine, like, does that actually like move the needle forward, you know? Like that's what I think about, but yeah.
Because if dad is like loving and wonderful and will let his daughter paint his nails, but he still votes again, like for that abortion bill, like what is gonna change for her? Like,
Yeah.
so like aligning. I guess I feel like I've talked about integrity like more than once today, but that's just like that's the thing. It's like if you are like, yeah, I'm a girl dad, I'm gonna be a feminist father, I'm gonna like do these things, and then don't vote accordingly or don't like stand up accordingly and speak out with your male peers or all those other things that you can do, that's not really integrity, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that like the kind of cult of the fatherhood, or even just the feminist father, sometimes gets a little bit overplayed, and like I feel this way sometimes about like the mental health, the male mental health thing, which is like, again, it's one of those things where I was like, it's really cool, I'm really happy with this. However, like you got to be aware of all these other things as well at the same time than just you know, like you taking care of yourself. Again, cool thing, however, there's more to this. And the same thing with the fatherhood thing. I think that there is like okay, first of all, before I start, like I deal with a lot of I try to help with a lot of fathers. I shout out to you all dads, by the way. Like even just regardless if we're like, it seems like we're like talking shit about dads.
About the concepts.
Yes, the concept. Yes,
surrounding fatherhood. But
yes.
the dads are cool.
Yeah, the dads are cool. Like you're cool. Like if your parenting is hard as hell, and like kudos to all the parents out there. Like, and specifically the ones who are. There's a lot of like good progressive stuff about being a father. However, like you're right. Like I think that sometimes we do take this idea of fatherhood, like we elevate it to a point where it's like sometimes it's a little comical, and you're like, this one person has like, yeah, like they paint their nails or they, you know what, like they're doing their hair. It's like, that's great. I'm happy that you are doing that. However, like moms have been doing this for ages, and like they don't get the credit, and they don't get the credit as much as fathers do. And they, like, you see a TikTok video with a father doing that and they get 1,000 views. You see the same TikTok with mom doing that, you're like, this is the same old thing. It happens every day, right? It's a different idea. So I'm totally with that. I think that there's kind of like this elevation of fatherhood. However, I'm just like, I am seeing some really cool fatherhood initiatives that are becoming progressive. There's definitely a pet peeve I have, but I just, I'll tell you in a second, but I would love to hear your thoughts on just like how we can kind of flip the script on that and just kind of not only help elevate fatherhood, but also help elevate the women in our lives who are doing that stuff every day.
Well, I definitely think there's like a movement of guys already who are kind of like, I want to be an equal parent. Like, I want to do the same work that my partner does, and I don't need accolades for it. Like, I just want to do it, and like just genuinely want to be there for their kids. They want to learn. They want to do things, and I'm just like, fuck yes, like do it. And so, like, I hope that the sort of like over praising that might be happening is hopefully just going to increase the number of guys who are just like, okay, this is like normal and expected now, hopefully, and like I feel like this is something that I can do. Because I know there's also like a big narrative of like incompetent dads in media as well, right? Like just the Homer Simpsons of the world who like can't do shit right and just like fuck up all the time. And I don't really, like, I hope that guys aren't like, maybe this like DadCore and like trying to make fatherhood seem really cool is like a way to like balance that out and try to be like, actually, like, listen, like you can be competent at parenthood and it's good. Like it is a good thing to be. Like, so that's kind of what I would hope from that, and maybe that's the direction we're going in. Like we might just be seeing an overcompensation for the amount of, I don't know, narratives around absent dads, neglectful dads, incompetent dads. Maybe now we're just being like, look, fatherhood's cool and you can do it. Like, and it's awesome, do it. Like, I don't know. Maybe that's the changing tide.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I second that. And I think Like, I'm interested in hearing what it's like to be a father for fathers. Like, I want to hear about the humanity of fatherhood and like what that feels like on the inside for them. Like, what is that experience like, you know, when you are moving from being somebody who's only taking care of yourself to like moving to having to manage, you know, emotions of your kids and like deal with, for example, the fathers who are at work and are working for companies who offer paternity leave, but then when they go and talk to their boss about getting paternity leave, their boss is like, hell no, you can't fucking take paternity leave. I know
Right.
we offer it in name because we want to like be good, but don't take it. They get made fun of by their coworkers, all that. Like, I want to hear about what that's like what that's like, because you know, as much as like it's nice to kind of have those like pretty like Instagrammable moments and stuff, but what's I think the humanizing part is understanding all of those things that prevent fathers like systemically from being those great fathers, right? Like from understanding fatherhood as, I mean, what I can't, I'm not a dad. I'm not even a parent, so I don't know like exactly what fatherhood is like in the humanizing context, but whatever that is, like that would be what I would be interested in like having that conversation on a more public forum, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that there's that stuff happening. I know like Veronica posted something like Dad Central. Dad Central does a lot of here in Alberta anyways, they do a lot of like programs specifically made for fatherhood. This is actually my pet. This touches on my pet peeve because I work with Dad Central. Dad Central is great. They do something called Super Dad, Super Kids. They do kind of a program. It's basically like parenting 101, but for fathers. And I'm just like, they call it Super Dad, Super Kids, but it's honestly like the same crap, same workshops, same parenting workshops that we would get to anybody, but we just have the name dad on it and people just dads to show up. So I want to mention this to dads that you are a parent too. Like, and you are you can come to these parenting workshops as well. You don't have to have the name dad on it for you to come. Just do it. Like this is honestly my pet peeve for dad parents. They need to have that kind of like dad thing. It's like, oh no, maybe it's not for me. I'm just like, no, it's for you. Like like you can also learn these things too. You can learn how to change diapers. You can learn about emotional regulation within your babies and your teen, whatever. Like all those things you can learn, and you don't have to have the name dad in front of it. Just do it.
That's
Secondly,
awesome.
there's a lot of like cool things. I noticed one thing in the UK. It's called Music, Football, and Fatherhood, which is takes this concept of like trying to connect people who love like specific music, who love like soccer, but also like just fathers who like really just want to talk about being fathers too. So it's like it's interesting because it's this website which connects like, oh, they talk about soccer, they'll talk about thing, but then there's like there's like an article that's like raising a child with special needs with a father, and like, or how do you have family fun stuff with father, and they just released this book. It's called Dad. It's called Untold Stories of Fatherhood, Love, Mental Health, and Masculinity. Really like what they're doing, and they have a podcast called Daddy Debates. And
That's so cute.
so it's like I love when dads are like helping kind of each other thing. They're just like, you know what, come with me, let me take you to this kind of idea, because I love that idea of like connection and fatherhood. But yeah, like that to me, I'm just like you can be a parent too. You don't need to have the dad thing in front of it. Just do it. Just do the thing. Like you can do it. Just the same thing as moms do. It's the same way. It's the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is an appropriate moment to also shout out our favorite Edmonton dads group, Rad Dads.
Absolutely.
Tell them how much we love them. But I do think like ultimately the fact that there are, whether or not they're necessary, as you have rightly pointed out, Herman, to like put dad in front of something to get dads to go, the fact that they're going and there's stuff for them, I'm happy about. And I'm again also, as much as it's an interesting trend, I hope people will Google DadCore after this, because I had to Google it to know what it was as well. And it's like, are socks and sandals cool now? Like, is this cool now? I'm like, great, like whatever, like that's awesome. Again, I guess I'm thinking about the messages that maybe men have received in the past that are like, fatherhood is it's like a status, but it's not something that you do. And I'm glad that that may be changing, and that they're not thinking just now about like, oh, like to be a man, I need to be, you know, wealthy and own a house and get married to a woman because heteronormativity, and have children because that's important. But it was like it was a piece of status to like check a box. I got kids. But now I'm hoping that it's being reshaped into a thing that you do. Like fatherhood is a thing that you do because it's constant. Like you are doing it in order for it to be something different. Because yeah, I know that fatherhood for my dad was a checking of a box and not a practice of doing. So I'm like,
Yeah, for
I
sure.
hope this is changing for younger people.
Yeah.
Same.
I also wanted to, because I caught you in a moment in Samantha in on our last meeting, and I wanted to relive that because it was pretty good. Uh, so I wanted to talk about Dad Bods, how this idea of like of
How
like
did that even? I don't even know how did that happen? How did that turn?
it's the same idea of like the DadCore stuff. It's like all of a sudden socks with sandals and like chunky shoes are like really popular now again, and like these like I blame like someone like Barack Obama who's like this cool guy but also word is like these it was just like a dad stuff. I think that's what I think that's who I really blame. However, like Dad Bods all of a sudden like have been like, oh, it's cool to have a dad bod now. But I know you have a take about this, so go on, just make it happen.
My thing is, and I honestly don't know how the term surfaced. Okay, I just know that one day Leonardo DiCaprio showed up on a beach somewhere with one of his model girlfriends with like a pudge, and the way that I felt about it was like, okay, there are a lot like Paul Giamatti probably had a pudge at the time. Nobody was calling it a dad bod. But as soon as Leo is on the beach with a little pudge, all of a sudden it's a dad bod. Booski, it's a pudge. It's a pudge. I don't know why we're calling it a dad bod. There are a lot of dads out there who are very fit. I think it's unfair to them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just don't get the concept behind it. And I'm just like, when we talk, like, if we were at least talking about like a parent bod, I might be like, you know what? Once you become a parent, you just have all these kids to feed, like, sure. But ask me, when's the last time that you have heard, actually, I'll ask you, when's the last time you heard somebody saying something about a mom bod, even though moms are out here literally giving birth to every single person on this planet? Makes no sense. Yeah. It makes no sense. And it's patriarchy. It's bullshit and it's patriarchy. It's like, oh, this attractive dude decided to get a little pudge, so all of a sudden he has a dad bod. And then you got people who are Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm like, I was trying to go far to find somebody who wasn't a dad. Leonardo DiCaprio does not have any kids. Why does he have a dad bod? Why are we calling him a dad bod? He's not a dad.
Probably because the women he dates could be his kids.
Okay. You know
it's
what
true.
I mean? Yeah. I'm like, this shit makes no sense to me. And I don't know. I mean, I'm in good company here. I can say it's just another part of patriarchy. It's just another furtherance of patriarchy. That we call it something cute and it's all in the magazine. So we're like, oh, this is nice. But actually it's harmful. Please stop. You know what I mean? You know who has a dad bod? Jason Momoa. He has a dad bod.
Jason Momoa, there was, I showed you that article.
Like an Aquaman dad bod. And that's fine.
That guy had
like a dad.
That guy had I envy his body. Like there's no way I could get his body. However, this article that's just from Mel Magazine says Jason Momoa dad bod, and you look at that picture, and I'm just like, how?
So ridiculous. So ridiculous.
I guess I want to definitely echo, I think, what Samantha's saying, because I feel like on the one hand, I'm like, oh yeah, like maybe this is like the beginning of like more body positivity for men. And I'm like, yeah, we should be able to be like, dads, it's cool. Or anyone, any man, it's cool. Like however you look, love yourself. That's like, I love that. And like, let's not like expect guys across the board to have six packs just because. But I'm really not stoked that it doesn't get applied to women, and we aren't forgiving of women who literally give birth. Like your body takes on however much extra pounds of baby and fucking fluid and weight and all these things, and then we're like, time for you to go get your tummy tuck, like time for you to go get your boob lift and fix your body. And it's just like, why are they not given any kind of grace? Why do we still have that? So like I would be down. I would be much more down for the concept of let's celebrate dad bods if we ever gave that kind of grace and love to mums. I want that for them too. So not that I'm vehemently opposed to the concept of dad bod, but I'm just sort of like at a loss as to why we can't offer that same compassion to women.
Do you? And I have seen like women like sharing each other's like stretch marks, and I think that's been a thing that I've seen lately, and I think that's really cool. And then just like, but it is definitely more like a women kind of raising other women up kind of thing, and it hasn't been kind of adapted into the culture, being like, oh, look at this cool thing, like hashtag stretch mark kind of like thing, like the same way that dad bod has been, you can have a hashtag mom bod. With the same way, right?
Yeah, or if you ever see the hashtag mom bod, you know it's going to be people making fun of that person and not uplifting them.
Yeah, unless they call her a MILF, in which case, you know. But then that means that she's like slim and older, you know. And it sucks when somebody calls you a MILF and you're not an actual mom. You're just like, damn. I mean, that has not happened to me, but it has happened to people I know. And they're like, yo, just because I'm 41 and I'm hot does not mean that I'm a mom. Like, damn. You know, so I just, it's, yeah. I don't know. I think the thing with one of the other issues that I have with the dad bod is like, it's not celebrating body positivity. It's just a way to justify people being okay with having bodies that aren't fit. And it's like, why can't it be okay for people not to be fit?
Yeah.
Like, why do we have to coin that something? You know what I mean? And like, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I agree. I'm definitely in like the multiple masculinity thing, and just being like, you do you. Like, if you want to have a fit bod, you go for it. If you don't want to have a fit bod, you do that too. Like, as long as you're happy and healthy, I don't give a shit. Like, that's all I really care about. Like, if some like, and honestly, like, I have seen beautiful people of all different types of bodies, and I think that's good in all ways. You know what I mean? And I agree with you. I don't think we need to like, you know, make this into like a cultural moment for some reason. You know what I mean? Yeah, like it's a weird. You know, I'm also not like gonna wear like socks and sandals or like chunky New Balances or anything like that either. So I don't know. But if you want to do that, go for it. Like, that's not my. You do it. You do you. You do you. Yeah.
A phone case on the outside.
Pants up to here.
Yep.
Yep. Just like Charles, Brooklyn 99.
Yes.
Just like our friend Mark Nickel.
Cargo pants. I mean, they're practical. No one can argue that. Having lots of pockets is great. And if anyone knows that, it's women. So we never have fucking pockets on our clothes.
Right. I'm wearing a dress right now with pockets, and I can tell you that it's ripped a few times, and I've sewn it back because it's like one of two dresses that I have with like pockets in it. And it's just like, you know what I mean?
Those dresses just hit different.
They really do.
You cannot replace that. I am wearing a dress without pockets right now, and I feel I'm stressed. I need my pockets.
Yeah. Where are you gonna put your wallet? Your gigantic wallet.
It's bad. It's bad. I actually did have a gigantic wallet. Do you?
I had a gigantic wallet.
I had to downsize because my wallet wouldn't fit in any of my bags. But anyway, here we are. Getting off topic. Topic.
No, this is perfect.
Bad, Herman. Bad.
This is a perfect end to Cold Takes. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. This has been, you know, a fantastic way not only to introduce Samantha, but also just to have her here on the show. So thank you so much for being on Cold Takes, and I hope you will be able to come back again. You know, Sam is also working on Modern Manhood as well too. So she's one of the producers of Modern Manhood, and I'm sure you'll hear her voice again. So thank you so much for showing up, Samantha.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Thanks for having me. And
that's you. Yeah, you can say you. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, you can.
Who is us? It's just me here. Yes, thanks for having me.
Representing all of the United States.
Speaking on behalf of America today.
Hopefully not. Oh God. Anyway, no. Thanks. Awesome. Really fun. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Veronica, again for being here. I know that you brought some great topics today, so I really appreciate you bringing those things, even though they were like last minute. But also, I'm glad for everyone showing up as well too.
Yeah, learned a lot.
Yeah. So, again, if you want to, like, we will broadcast cold takes out in Modern Manhood as well. We didn't get any questions today, but just be aware that if you are an Inner Circle member, you're allowed to ask questions. You're the only people who are allowed to ask questions. So ask us questions. It's fine. You can also say something nice on the comments. We put a lot of things in the comments. If you miss this, it's always going to be on the link. It's going to be there for you to actually look at. You can also click on the links as well. If you're listening on audio, you know where to find us. If you go to Modern Man Pod on Twitter and on Instagram, you can also find obviously Next Gen Men at Next Gen Men on Twitter and on Instagram as well. Veronica, is there any cool events that are coming up this month?
Yeah, join us on June 14th. We are unpacking no homo as a term because it's something, a lot of us grew up like hearing over and over again, discussing why, homophobia and transphobia are obviously harmful to the LGBTQ community, but how they're also harmful to straight men in the ways that they affect their relationships with others. So yeah, that's June 14th at 7 p.m. Pacific time. Don't get tricked by the time zones. I know we jump around time zones a bit, so just be mindful of that. That would be the next one coming up.
Awesome. And Samantha, anything popping up for you, or anywhere do you want someone to follow you?
Well, if you want to see me talking shit on Twitter, I'm at Samantha L_N. Talk a lot of things about mostly I just talk shit to people about patriarchy all day on Twitter. So
beautiful.
You can see that. Yeah. Also, You can follow Masculinity Pod. That's MS. Masculinity spelled with a K. You can find us as a red mask on all the socials. We'll be back at the end of the summer. So.
Yeah, excited for that. Thanks again for showing on the show. Thank you again for all of our Inner Circle listeners that are gonna listen to this later on, maybe, or listening to this right now. So again, have a wonderful day, have a wonderful night, enjoy the weather. If you have some good weather, please do that. And we'll see you next time on Cold Takes. Bye, everyone.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, friends.
Thank you.